It's that time again. Welcome back to Shoe Leather Faith. And again, I'm Robert McMillan. My children have decided not to sue me for false representation of the way I raised them. So life is good once again. We're going to look into an issue that's important to everyone. And it's an issue that causes so much grief and heartache, particularly for adolescents. So let's get into it right now. We're going to talk about low self-esteem and your teenagers. Most of our children look in the mirror and they're hoping to find Brad Pitt or Jennifer Lawrence looking back at them. Instead, they usually see the face of either Bozo the Clown or Minnie Pearl. And it's heartbreaking to them. They're harder on themselves than they have any reason to be. Our children, as they go through the natural process of adolescence, are no longer children, but they are, by the transitional nature of adolescence, very inadequate adults. This produces the potential for serious self-esteem problems. How do we parents help them with their self-esteem during that time? And I've got a few things I want to share with you real quick. One, we give them a sense of belonging. There's a reason that God brings us into His family when He saves us. God is not content to simply make us residents of His kingdom, nor does He rest at making us citizens of His kingdom. God makes us intimate family members. He desires us to belong, and belonging is an expression of love. And we parents must love our children by giving them a place of honor in our lives. That builds their self-esteem because they believe they're important to us, even at a time when they're separating from us as they're becoming adults. Remember, caution them frequently that no one can steal their self-worth without their permission. If your teens have the opinion that they're of little worth, they'll soon be acting out sexually their low opinion of themselves. And remember, when it comes to their self-esteem, appearance is a big deal, particularly for the young girls. It's never too late to focus on your teenager's inner beauty. In Psalm 139, verse 14, the psalmist says, "I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well." One of those works are our children. The psalmist got it right. He said, "I'm one of your works, and I'm marvelous." That's not a false ego or patting himself on the back. That's just a natural expression of who he knows himself to be. A creature made in the image of God. Do your teens believe this about themselves? They will learn it only from you, certainly not from their peers and not from their schools where they're taught that they're merely evolutionary freaks that just happen to survive a few million years in the pond. Help them to express satisfaction and find balance with their physical appearance. When Moses was being recruited by God to take Israel out of Egypt at the Exodus, God gave him his marching orders, but then Moses came back and said to the Lord, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." So the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you have to say." Another thing to do for your children in regard to self-worth is remind them of their inestimable value. They're infinitely valuable, not just to you, but to God. And they have great value just being on this planet, because God has a plan for their lives. They don't see it that way. Picture yourself in a situation when your bills are increasing rapidly while your income is going down. You're expected to make ends meet with the odds all against you. Teenagers feel similar situations of stress. At a time when they may feel increasingly inadequate, they must meet the challenges of schoolwork, extracurricular activities such as sports or dating, peer pressure to perform, parental pressure to excel, and physical and sexual changes in their body that they're not ready for. An additional pressure upon our kids is the peer pressure that they're going to be facing every day they're with their friends, or they're at school, or whatever, where there are other peers. 46% of parents of unchurched teenagers feel negative peer pressure for their teens. It's almost identical for parents of church teenagers. It's 47%. Hardly any difference at all. And let me ask you, what does a teenager's peers provide? They provide acceptance. That means the inclusion in a group, which is important to them. It means rejection. In other words, everyone who's not in that group is rejected. And for teenagers, that's one of the things they struggle with. It gives them a personal identity. It gives them a group identity. It teaches them faithfulness to that group. And it teaches them about betrayal of that group. Superficiality. What do you have to say or be or do to be part of the group? Honesty. How honest must you be to be in that group? Confidence. It teaches about love. And usually it's a defective or worldly kind of love, not the kind of love that we understand to be God's love. It provides sexual attraction. It produces self-worth. They belong to that group, and that group counts for something. It produces compromise, forgiveness, companionship. These are all things that they're looking for, and they find them within their group of peers. Depending on the group of peers, those could be negative or positive characteristics of that group. Now, how can we direct them to the right peers? Well, in Proverbs 13, verse 20, it says, "He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed." And that's one of our big fears for our children. Again, later in Proverbs 24, verses 1 and 2, it says, "Do not be envious of evil men, nor desire to be with them." That's hard to tell that to a teenager who really wants to fit in with his peers. "For their heart devises violence, and their lips talk of troublemaking." You and I, as parents, must provide sufficient good environments for them. Don't expect them to commit to Christian friends if they're rarely in church or they're never in a youth group. If you're not going to church now, you need to start going. Because if you think you don't need it, which is a lie, if you think you don't need it, at least your teenage children do. You're going to need the support that that youth group and that church family will provide for you through your teen. Another thing that our teenagers face that impacts their self-worth is sexual pressure. And you need to explore the causes of sexual pressure. First of all, they're having hormones ripping through their bodies they never knew before. And they're getting voices spoken in their ears they've never had to hear before. How do you prevent that failure under sexual pressure? There's an immediate preventative. You listen to your children when they want to talk. In a recent survey of 1,200 teenagers, they were asked to finish the sentence, "If I could change one thing about my parents, it would be..." What do you think it was? The most frequent response was that my parents and I could really talk to one another. In a similar study of 2,000 teenagers, in completing the statement, "I wish," and the most often repeated response was, "I wish I could talk to my folks about some of my problems." Obviously, they felt they couldn't. Communication requires a listener. If you want to communicate with and to your teenager, you must be quick to listen. In James 1:19 it says, "So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath." We're usually quick to speak because we've always had all the answers for our kids. Next time we're going to go into sexual failure in our children. How do we handle that? And what is sexual failure? But in the meantime, pray for your children and for their sense of self-worth. And you be part of the solution for them, not part of the problem. And if your children say, "I'd like to talk to you," listen. But don't use it as an invitation to a sermon. Don't preach at them. You see, the thing is with teenagers, when they move from childhood adolescents, you're invited to give your counsel by invitation only. You can't just force your opinion on them. That worked when they were children. It doesn't work so well when they're becoming adults. Anyway, we're going to stop there, and I hope that you enjoyed this and tell some friends about it. And if you would you subscribe to this channel so you can get these every few days. They come out twice a week. Every 2 days there'll be a new video, and you can be on top of that. And if you like this video, hit the like button down below. And down at the very bottom, there's a place for comments. If you have comments or questions or anything you'd like me to discuss in a future video about this issue or another issue, put it down there. I will get back to you. Until then, keep praying for those teenagers and just keep loving them.